Commander Jack Reynolds had experienced many firsts in his 30-year diplomatic career. First human to negotiate with the Chinese-European alliance during the Resource Wars, first envoy to the underwater nations after the Great Thaw, but first human to represent Earth to an interstellar confederation of alien species was definitely going on his resume with extra bold font. If he survived it. Commander, they're requesting we remove our defensive exoskeletons before entering the chamber, reported Mia Daniels, his quick-witted assistant whose diplomatic credentials were matched only by her collection of obscure Earth idioms. Reynolds looked down at his standard-issue Navy suit. These are clothes, Daniels. Regular clothes. Tell them we're not wearing exoskeletons, we just have external skin coverings. Already tried that, sir. They insist our chitinous protective layers are making the Pleng X delegation nervous. Reynolds sighed deeply. First contact had gone reasonably well 3 months ago, when the massive Confederation ship appeared in Earth orbit. The aliens weren't hostile, just bureaucratic, which was somehow worse. Fine. Tell them I'll come in my undergarments if that makes the giant sentient jellyfish more comfortable. 20 minutes and one awkward near-strip search later, Reynolds stood before the Confederation Council in his undershirt and boxers. They insisted his pants were concealing lower limb assault appendages. The council chamber resembled a massive amphitheater populated by the most bizarre collection of life forms humans had ever encountered. Floating gas bags, crystalline structures with pulsing lights, things that looked disconcertingly like ambulatory house plants. High Counselor Zeal, a being that appeared to be constructed entirely of shimmering blue cables in a vaguely humanoid shape, spoke through the translation matrix. Commander Reynolds of Terra, we have reviewed your species application for Confederation membership. There seems to be a concerning discrepancy. Reynolds maintained his diplomatic smile. How can we clarify, High Counselor? You've categorized your species as omnivorous social primates and your world as temperate continental. Our xenobiologists have completed preliminary studies and Zeal's cables twisted in what might have been discomfort. We believe you are actually apex predators from a Class 5 death world. I'm sorry, a what now? A holographic display activated, showing humans engaging in various activities. A marathon runner, a weightlifter, a chef preparing a steak. These are clearly Deathworlders, said another counselor, a bulbous creature with multiple eye stalks. Look at their endurance capabilities, their strength ratios. They consume the flesh of other creatures for sustenance. Reynolds laughed. No, we're really quite gentle. I mean, yes, we eat meat, but we're hardly apex predators. The display changed to show a UFC match. And what is this ritual combat to the death? Demanded Zeal. That's just entertainment. Nobody dies, Reynolds protested. Well, almost never. A third counselor, resembling a giant pill bug, raised what might have been an appendage. They exposed themselves to toxic chemicals for pleasure. The display showed people drinking coffee, then alcohol. That's complicated, Reynolds admitted. And they deliberately exposed their dermis to dangerous radiation for aesthetic purposes. The display showed a crowded beach. That's called tanning, Reynolds explained desperately. It's just sunlight. The council erupted in alarmed chittering. Apparently just sunlight was terrifying to species that evolved under different stars. After the chamber quieted, Zeal's voice came through the translator again. Commander Reynolds, based on overwhelming evidence, we must classify humans as dangerous predatory organisms and Earth as a Class 5 death world. Your application for full membership is denied pending evolutionary changes or significant genetic modification to reduce your threat level. That's ridiculous. We're not dangerous. Reynolds protested, accidentally slamming his fist on the podium, which promptly cracked under the impact. The entire council flinched back simultaneously. Case in point, Zeal noted dryly. Protective observation. Reynolds muttered, staring out the window of his office at the sleek alien ships maintaining formation around Earth. They've quarantined our entire planet because they think we're too dangerous. 3 months of diplomacy down the drain because they're afraid we'll eat them. To be fair, sir, Mia Daniels said, scrolling through her tablet, after they classified us as death world predators, but requests for human cooking shows increased 800% in their entertainment networks. We're basically the galaxy's equivalent of Tiger King. Reynolds collapsed into his chair. Great. We're space rednecks with big cats. Worse. We're the big cats. The door chimed, and in walked, or rather, glided their assigned observer. Vixnara resembled a tall, slender humanoid with iridescent scales and large, compound eyes. Her species, the Tellurians, were apparently the Confederation's bureaucratic backbone. Greetings, dangerous creatures, Vixnara announced cheerfully. I require access to your grocery stores for today's observation. Reynolds forced a smile. For the 1000th time, Vix, we're not dangerous creatures. We're just humans. Your denial of biological reality is noted, Commander. Vixnara made a series of clicks with her mandibles while tapping on her translucent datapad. However, your species consumes approximately 2,000 different species. That's more than any other omnivore in the Confederation. That's because we appreciate culinary diversity, Daniels interjected. You ferment plant materials to create neurotoxins which you then voluntarily ingest, Vixnara continued. Your young engage in recreational falling from heights. She displayed footage of a skate park. And you deliberately expose yourselves to sonic damage for pleasure. The screen showed a rock concert. It's called music, Reynolds said wearily. It exceeds safe decibel levels for 97% of sentient species. The protective observation had been going on for 2 weeks now. Various Confederation scientists followed humans around, documenting their death world behaviors with a mix of horror and fascination. Diplomatic relations were at a standstill. Later that day at the grocery store, Vixnara nearly had what Reynolds assumed was a panic attack when they reached the spice aisle. These are chemical weapons, she exclaimed, scanning a bottle of hot sauce. This contains capsaicin. It's a defensive neurotoxin that causes intense pain. It makes tacos taste better, Reynolds explained. You consume pain for enjoyment? I mean, when you put it that way. The situation deteriorated further at the sporting goods store, where Vixnara documented everything from baseball bats, primitive impact weapons, to football equipment, to battle armor, to fishing gear, aquatic creature impalement devices. When they passed by a yoga studio and saw people contorting themselves into various poses, Vixnara made a distressed clicking sound. Why are these humans deliberately dislocating their skeletal structures? It's relaxing, Daniel said. Pain is relaxing? Vixnara's compound eyes seemed to vibrate with confusion. By the end of the week, the Confederation had compiled a 700-page report titled Terrestrial Hazards, the Biological Imperative of Human Containment. Reynolds only made it through the executive summary before needing a drink which, according to page 231, was evidence of humanity's remarkable hepatic resilience to toxins that would terminate most carbon-based life forms. We need to change their perception, Reynolds told Daniels as they watched yet another Confederation shuttle arrive in orbit. Otherwise, we'll be quarantined forever. Actually, Daniels said, looking up from her tablet with concern, quarantine might be the least of our problems now. The Dravaks, Professor Marcus Wells explained, pulling up images on the holographic display, are essentially the Confederation's problem children. Reynolds, Daniels, and various government officials had gathered in the UN secure briefing room. Through diplomatic back channels and some light hacking, they discovered disturbing information about Confederation politics. The hologram showed reptilian humanoids with pronounced bone ridges and militaristic uniforms. They looked like someone had crossbred a velociraptor with a drill sergeant. Unlike most Confederation species, who evolved on worlds with numerous competing life forms, the Dravaks come from a planet with limited biodiversity. They never developed the same inhibitions about exploiting other ecosystems. And they specifically target dangerous planets? Asked the UN Secretary General. Death worlds, yes, Wells confirmed, running a hand through his perpetually disheveled hair. Their philosophy is simple. If a planet is too dangerous to join the Confederation, it doesn't deserve protection under Confederation law. Convenient loophole. Daniels muttered. Wells nodded. They've stripped 3 Class 5 planets in the last decade. The Confederation officially condemns their actions but does little to stop them. Reynolds studied the Dravak's images. So our classification as dangerous predators from a death world makes us a prime target, Wells finished. And the Council is currently debating whether Earth deserves protection or should be left to fend for itself. The vote is reportedly very close. We intercepted this communication from the Dravak's fleet, Daniel said, pulling up an audio file. The translation matrix rendered a harsh, guttural voice. Earth preliminary survey indicates abundant rare elements and biological compounds. Native predator species poses minimal threat to our extraction capabilities. Estimated completion time for full resource harvesting. 47 standard cycles. All native life forms to be neutralized as per standard protocol. Silence filled the room. That doesn't sound good, Reynolds finally said. It gets worse, Wells added. Based on their past operations, neutralizing native life forms means total biosphere collapse. They introduce engineered pathogens that target specific genetic markers. Everything on Earth would die within weeks. How long do we have? The Secretary General asked. The Dravak's fleet is currently 3 weeks out, Daniels replied. And the Confederation vote happens in 5 days. Reynolds stood up, pacing the room. So our choices are: somehow convince the Confederation we're not dangerous death world monsters, or convince them we're such dangerous death world monsters that even the Dravak should think twice, that Wells said with a glint in his eye that Reynolds recognized from years of knowing the eccentric scientist. You have a plan, Reynolds stated. Wells grinned. Less of a plan, more of a performance art piece, with potentially lethal consequences if we mess it up. Those are the best kind, Daniels deadpanned. The Confederation fears us because they think we're predators, Wells explained. The Dravaks are targeting us because they think we're manageable predators. What if we showed them both just how unmanageable Earth can be? Reynolds felt a smile spreading across his face. We lean into the stereotype. Exactly. If the Confederation is going to call us monsters, Wells said, let's show them what monsters can do. I still don't understand why we're at this hockey game, Vix Nara complained as she followed Reynolds and Daniels to their seats. Your report specifically requested I observe human cultural entertainment, but your theater performances seemed much less hazardous. Hockey is quintessentially human, Reynolds explained innocently. You want to understand us, right? 3 minutes into the first period, the first fight broke out on the ice. Vix Nara's compound eyes went wide as the crowd roared with approval, while 2 players pummeled each other. They're engaging in combat. During recreation, she shrieked, frantically taking notes. And the others are celebrating this violence? Oh, this is nothing, Daniels said casually. You should see what happens when someone wins the Stanley Cup. Operation Scary Human was in full swing. Across the globe, Confederation observers were being strategically exposed to humanity's most intimidating but carefully choreographed aspects. In Russia, observers watched military Arctic survival training where shirtless soldiers broke ice with their hands before swimming in freezing water. In Thailand, observers witnessed fire dancers who accidentally swallowed flames. In Brazil, observers were taken to witness free climbing without safety equipment. In Texas, a chili cook-off featured peppers so hot the human competitors wore hazmat gloves, all while joking about how mild the recipes were. Back at UN headquarters, Wells was coordinating the global theater with disturbing enthusiasm. The Maasai jumping demonstration went perfectly. The observers' biosigns showed extreme distress when they realized the humans weren't using anti-gravity assistance. He reported gleefully. Reynolds wasn't entirely comfortable with the deception, but reports showed the Dravak's fleet was maintaining course toward Earth, while Confederation debates grew more heated. Are we overdoing it? He asked Wells during a strategy session. Not yet, the professor replied. The Tellarians are compiling daily reports, and the Confederation is paying attention. Their military vessels have increased patrols near our solar system, which suggests they're at least considering us worth protecting. Or containing, Daniels pointed out. The final phase of Operation Scary Human was the most elaborate. They invited Vix Nara to observe a routine military exercise that was anything but routine. As her shuttle approached the remote desert location, they flew over elaborate scenes, soldiers dragging massive weights across sand dunes, the combat engineers constructing bridges in minutes, special forces operators holding their breath underwater for seemingly impossible lengths of time. Vix Nara's mandibles clicked rapidly as she documented everything. These capabilities exceed previous observations by 47%, she noted with suspicion. We try not to show off, Reynolds said with feigned modesty. The demonstration culminated with a typical infantry meal where soldiers appeared to casually consume rations laced with chemicals that would kill most Confederation species. Is that enriched capsaicin extract? Vix Nara asked, her voice rising an octave. Just a little hot sauce, a grinning soldier replied, taking another bite without flinching. Later that evening, Reynolds found Vix Nara reviewing her footage with a troubled expression. Something wrong? He asked. Commander Reynolds, I have been observing humans for 27 days now. Initially, all evidence supported your classification as death world predators. But these recent demonstrations, she hesitated. They seem performative. Reynolds maintained a neutral expression. How so? Your species shows remarkable capacities, yes. But the statistical probability of encountering so many extreme examples in such a short period is improbable. Her compound eyes fixed on him. Are you attempting to manipulate my reports? Before Reynolds could respond, his communicator buzzed. It was Wells. Dravak's scout ships have entered the solar system, he said without preamble, 4 days ahead of schedule. The game was over. It was time for the real performance to begin. The Dravak scout vessels resembled massive, serrated arrowheads. They moved with predatory precision, scanning Earth's defenses as they approached. 3 capital ships just emerged from FTL at the system edge, reported the technician at the UN Space Command Center. Configuration matches Dravak's harvester vessels, much larger than the scouts. Reynolds, Daniels, Wells, and a very confused Vix Nara watched as the alien fleet approached. The Confederation observation ships maintained their positions, technically neutral, but doing nothing to intervene. All this theater, and they're coming anyway, Reynolds said grimly. Theater got their attention, Wells said, nodding toward a cluster of new signals appearing on the display. The Confederation Council is here to watch. Indeed, a diplomatic vessel bearing Confederation markings had arrived, positioning itself at a safe distance. High Counselor Zeal and other representatives were observing the unfolding situation. Commander, Vix Nara said quietly, I've transmitted my full observation report, including my concerns about your recent demonstrations. The Council is aware that humans may be exaggerating their capabilities. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Daniels muttered. A communication request flashed on the main screen. The Dravaks were calling. Reynolds straightened his uniform. Let's see what they want. The screen flickered to life, showing a Dravak's commander even more intimidating than their holographic representations. Bone spurs protruded from scaled skin, and yellow eyes with vertical pupils regarded them coldly. I am Conquest Commander Kravnak of the Dravak's expansion fleet, the alien announced without preamble. Your world has been designated for resource extraction. Surrender now and we will establish preservation zones for 10% of your population. Generous, Reynolds said dryly. But we'll have to decline. Kravnak's scaled lips pulled back in what might have been amusement. Your species is classified as a moderate threat, impressive for primitives, but insufficient to deter us. We've studied your capabilities extensively. Have you now? Reynolds exchanged a glance with Wells. Your weapons are primitive. Your defenses inadequate. Your biological advantages nullified by our environmental suits. Kravnak leaned forward. The Confederation fears you because they are weak. We are not weak. Before you make a terrible mistake, Reynolds said carefully, I should inform you that Confederation observers are watching. Any aggressive action violates. Death worlds have no protection under Statute 7.3, Krav-Nek interrupted. We've already registered our claim. The Confederation can only observe. Reynolds nodded to Wells, who tapped commands into his console. Then I guess there's no reason to hold back anymore. Across Earth, pre-positioned assets activated. Not the theatrical demonstrations they'd arranged for Vix Nera, but humanity's actual capabilities. What are you doing? Vix Nera demanded as alerts flashed across her datapad. Showing you what humans are really capable of when threatened, Reynolds said quietly. The first Dravak scout vessel suddenly went dark, its systems compromised by cybersecurity protocols that had been embedded in seemingly innocent Confederation data exchanges weeks earlier. A second scout abruptly changed course, its navigation systems hijacked. On the view screen, Krav-Nek received reports from his subordinates, his reptilian features contorting in confusion. Impossible, he snarled. Your technology is inferior. Our technology may be, Reynolds admitted. But we make up for it in creativity. The Dravak's commander slammed a clawed fist down. These tricks change nothing. Our capital ships will be in weapons range in 20 minutes. Then we'll show you what real power is. The communication cut off. I hope Phase 2 is impressive, Daniel said, because he looked pretty confident. Wells grinned. Oh, it is. 20 minutes later, as the massive Dravak's harvester ships entered Earth's upper atmosphere, humanity revealed its true capabilities. Not through overwhelming firepower or advanced shields, the Dravaks indeed outmatched Earth in conventional military technology. Instead, humanity demonstrated why adaptability is the most terrifying weapon in the universe. They've deployed atmospheric dispersal vehicles, reported a technician, likely containing the bioweapon. Right on schedule, Wells said, activating his console. Deploy countermeasures. Across the globe, thousands of autonomous drones launched simultaneously, not weapons platforms, but specialized atmospheric processors based on technology developed to combat climate change. They surrounded the Dravak's dispensers, neutralizing the bioweapons before they could activate. On the view screen, Krav-Nek's face appeared again, rage evident in his alien features. What technology is this? Our intelligence indicated nothing of this capability. It was originally designed to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, Reynolds explained conversationally. We repurposed it this morning. Humans are good at improvising. The Dravak's commander hissed. It changes nothing. Our harvesters are impervious to your primitive weapons. We're not using weapons, Wells said, joining Reynolds. We're using mathematics. Across Earth's orbit, seemingly dormant satellites, weather monitors, communications relays, scientific instruments suddenly reoriented themselves. Not to attack, but to form a complex network that began broadcasting precisely calculated electromagnetic frequencies. What are those devices doing? Vix Nera asked, watching in fascination. Creating constructive interference patterns, Wells explained. The Dravak ships use crystalline power conduits. Hit them with the right harmonic frequency and... On the screen, the first harvester ship began to shudder as its power systems went into cascade failure. That's not possible. Krav-Nek roared. You're a pre-Confederation civilization. Technically, Reynolds said with a shrug. But we've been studying the Confederation technology in your observation ships for months. Fascinating stuff. The second harvester began listing to one side, emergency systems failing. The third remained operational but was unable to deploy its resource extraction equipment as the harmonic disruption spread. Commander Reynolds, Vix Nera said quietly, this capability was not in any of your technological directories. We didn't build it until yesterday, Daniels explained. Professor Wells had the theory last week. We tested it 2 days ago. Deployed it this morning. Vix Nera's compound eyes seemed to widen. Your species can develop and deploy new technological paradigms in days? When properly motivated, Reynolds said, watching as the Dravak's fleet began a hasty retreat. We're very adaptable. On the view screen, Kravnak's fury had turned to something else. Something Reynolds recognized from his decades of diplomatic experience. Here. The Dravak's empire will remember this, the commander said. This is not over. Actually, it is, came a new voice as the Confederation diplomatic vessel established a three-way communication. High Counselor Zeal's blue cable form appeared beside Kravnak's image. The Council has voted. Earth is now under Confederation protection, effective immediately. On what grounds? Demanded Kravnak. They're Death Worlders. Yes, Zeal agreed, cable limbs shifting in what Reynolds now recognized as amusement. And you've just demonstrated why the classification exists. It's not a warning about the species, it's a warning for the species' own protection. After the Dravaks retreated and the immediate crisis passed, Reynolds found himself back in the Confederation Council chamber. This time he was permitted to wear his full uniform. Humanity presents us with a unique situation, Zeal was saying to the assembled council. It's a species with predatory origins but cooperative instincts, dangerous capabilities tempered by ethical considerations. Most concerning, added the bulbous counselor, is their adaptability. They don't merely use technology, they reshape it to their needs with alarming speed. Vixnara stepped forward, presenting her final report. Based on my observations, I recommend a modified classification. Earth remains a Class 5 death world, but humans should be categorized as protected predator collaborators rather than outright threats. Agreed, Zeal said. Furthermore, I propose we offer Earth Provisional Confederation membership, with appropriate safeguards. Their demonstrated ability to repurpose technology without destructive intent suggests they could be valuable allies. Reynolds struggled to maintain his diplomatic composure. This was better than they'd hoped for. And perhaps, Zeal added, with what might have been a shiver of his cable form, it's better to have them inside our coalition than outside it. 6 months later, the first human delegation took up residence in the Confederation's diplomatic sector. Jack Reynolds, newly appointed ambassador to the Confederation, stood on the observation deck watching ships from 100 worlds coming and going. You know what's ironic? Daniel said, joining him at the viewport. After all that work trying to convince them we weren't dangerous predators from a death world. We ended up proving we're exactly that, Reynolds finished with a chuckle. Just not in the way they expected. The Dravaks have officially filed a grievance, she added, checking her datapad. They're demanding reparations for their damaged vessels. Send them Professor Wells' new paper on harmonic crystalline disruption with a note, saying the next version will be even more effective. As they turned to leave, they passed a group of alien tourists cautiously watching the human delegation from a distance. One small alien child broke away from the group, approaching Reynolds with curious eyes. Is it true? The child asked through a translator, that humans drink poison for pleasure? Reynolds smiled, pulling a small bottle of hot sauce from his pocket, the very same brand that had so terrified Vixnara in the grocery store. Want to try some? He offered innocently. Behind him, Daniel struggled not to laugh as nearby aliens gasped in horror. Earth's reputation as the scariest friendly planet in the Confederation was secure. The universe had wanted monsters. They got humans instead. Much, much worse.